You surface from the underground at Piccadilly Circus,
Mind the gap.
making your way through the glittering lights of London's West End. You take a turn down a quaint-looking street into the notorious neighborhood of Soho. The lights are up, the crowd is buzzing, and you just stepped into the best seat in the house. Welcome to The Big Smoke, a variety show podcast. I'm Kevin Bennett, and I'll be your guide through this experience of comedy, conversation, and community. Do you know what music is? Today's episode explores how it's more than just the magical serum that makes your New Year's running resolution a little less torturous. First up, I'm joined by Bill Barclay, Artistic Director of Concert Theatre Works, to talk about his latest endeavor, What Music Is, a bold new theory of music's purpose in our species, combining music, neuroscience, and astrophysics. It may just change your relationship with music forever. Then, on our Parish Noticeboard, we lace up and learn about Parkrun, the free weekly 5K held around the world, and the only race where no one comes in last. And finally, we bring a little magic to the audio stage with a brand new comedy segment for 2026, Apprentice Magicians, The Strange Brothers. How do you perform magic on a podcast? You'll have to listen to find out. So, let's raise the curtain. Director, writer, and composer Bill Barclay's work has been performed for the British royal family, for President Obama, at the Olympic Games torch relay, and at venues such as the Hollywood Bowl and the Royal Albert Hall. Please help me welcome Bill Barclay. Bill, thank you so much for joining us on The Big Smoke.
It's great to be here in the studio. Thanks.
Oh my gosh, so I have known you for 10 years, believe it or not.
I can't.
Did the math. Recently, I discovered this short documentary called What Music Is, which is one of your latest projects. And as soon as I watched it, I thought I would really love to hear more about it. And I don't know, to me, it seemed really interesting, but also important in a way, and looking at what music is doing in a way that I'd never thought about before. So we're going to get to that in a second. But I'd love some context for you and your career, because it's not, from what I see reading about you and knowing you now for 10 years, it's not linear. It's not obvious, that people who become actors and they stay actors for their whole career, there's sort of step 1, 2, 3 or whatever. You've had this journey that's gone a little bit all over the place, the UK, the States, all around the world. Can you tell us a bit about how it started, how your career started, what your goals were when you first started training and things like that?
Thanks. I had a problem the first 10 years of my adult life where I was really conflicted between studying music and studying theater. That's how it manifested, of course, because it's all about school and what are you going to go to conservatory for? How are you going to train? Who are you going to be your teachers? What's going to be your focus? And it took me a while to realize that these two parts of my brain were actually quite even. They were 50-50, and that quote-unquote problem was actually the greatest expression of what I ought to be doing in the world. I see that now, but I made every singing teacher, acting teacher, playwriting teacher, conducting teacher furious as I came through the ranks, because not all of them, but some of them at some point said something to me like, look, you might actually be good at this someday if you really stuck with it, but you're doing all these other things and all these other after-hour activities. And I realized that I loved the first 100 hours of studying a musical instrument, but then I wanted to have the first 100 hours of another musical instrument. I sort of was a serial monogamist with other musical instruments and other skills, and didn't have the desire or drive to burrow deep in the earth and master a single craft.
Interesting.
And when you're coming up, that's quite a liability, right?
Yeah.
Because then who are you? And what are you doing, actually? And it wasn't until I ended up working with a pair of Shakespeare festivals in my 20s in Boston and in Lenox where it became obvious that I was somewhat valuable to these very poor companies because I could both act and I could compose music. And so they would get 2 jobs for the price of one in some cases.
Ah, okay.
And you've seen this.
Yeah.
You see people do this. So they might fight, direct, and act. They might,
100%.
right? It's actually very common in certain combinations, but chiefly it's a survival mechanism because no one pays you enough to do anything. One doesn't realize that you were actually meant to do both these things all at once. You are a writer-director. You are a, choreographer, actor, all that. And so now that I realize that it's quite standard, all it took for me was to understand what combining music and story together meant for me, really.
So you were acting professionally, and you were working in Boston and in Massachusetts. Where was the other place you were at?
Shakespeare and Company, the more famous festival, is in the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
And so you're doing that, and you're craving music as well, or you're involved with music, bringing music into the plays as well. And then where I met you, obviously there's so much in between that, but one of the next big things is you became the director of music at Shakespeare's Globe. So how do we get from Massachusetts to London to the Globe? How does that happen? Is that through the acting, or is that through the music, or a combination of both?
The only thing I can say is that I was the right person at the right time in a very lucky scenario. I had come over to compose a production of Hamlet at the Globe in 2012. And as an American 31-year-old, you can imagine that is the coolest thing not only to have happened to me in my life, but I expected at that time that was the peak.
Yeah.
I was like, here we go, 31. It's never going to be better than this. We're both Americans. Well, you're Canadian. We're both North Americans.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Be careful. Make that correction very clear right now.
Yeah, we're both North Americans. When I came over, I felt completely included for the first time in a theater world that I idolized. And most Americans know, if they're in the theater or not, that this is really home turf here. In Britain, theater is in the groundwater. It's a national treasure. To do Shakespeare at the Globe was very impressive to me. I was pinching myself in the building the whole time. And just to convince you that I'm not being overly modest about this situation, it was my 3rd day at work where I was brought in for a meeting with the artistic director, and he said, our head of music has left. They've had an issue and they've had to go. And I said, when are you going to hire this next person? Because I'm desperate to meet them. I would love to come back, please. And he said, actually, we just interviewed all the finalists, and I don't like any of them. Would you like to do it?
Oh my God. So you're 3 days in, and here's the gig. What happens?
Well, hilariously, I said, look, I don't know how to handle this conversation. I was very honest about it. And I said,
how old are you? 32?
Yeah, 31.
31?
Wow. I said, I have to go home. I need to get my stuff. I have an opera I'm directing. I have 2 shows that I'm scoring. And hilariously, Kevin, I was supposed to be on stage as the tap dancing male lead in a Marx Brothers musical that I was due to do the next month. And he literally looked at me and he said, buy clothes here. And he said,
my God, I love it.
He said, call them because you're not going home.
Oh my God.
And it's just everything changed, and they got a visa for me. That was an imperfect process. I worked there 7 years. I did 130 productions producing live music for shows indoor and outdoor. The Hamlet production that went to every country in the world, the 3 Broadway shows. I learned hopefully everything I would have needed to learn in order to eventually leave, but it was an unbelievable chapter in my life.
From an observer, the things that you did and what you created in that place was incredible. I saw many of the shows, and this brings us actually nicely into this bit that I want to talk about, which is, so we met. I actually remember, weirdly, I don't know, we had a really nice conversation during a tech rehearsal in Liverpool for The Merchant of Venice. I have this clear memory, but I don't know what we talked about, but it's kind of poignant in the discovery of this documentary, what music is, and how this concept of the music of the spheres, which I'll get you to tell us about in a second, came about because one of my favorite quotes in all Shakespeare comes from The Merchant of Venice. And I think, you can tell me if I'm wrong, links to the music of the spheres, but I'll just say the quote now. So this is, if anyone knows the play, it's near the end of the play. Characters Lorenzo and Jessica are looking up at the stars. And this is Lorenzo talking to Jessica, I believe. So he says, there's not the smallest orb which thou beholdst, but in his motion like an angel sings, still choiring to the young-eyed cherubins. Such harmony is in immortal souls, but whilst this muddy vesture of decay doth grossly close it in, we cannot hear it. And that has always been a quote that stuck with me. I love it so much. I think it's referring to the music of the spheres, this concept, yes?
Completely.
So tell me about, because when I was reading about the genesis of one of your latest projects, What Music Is, tell me about how, the work at the Globe, the music of the spheres, how that evolved into this topic that we're going to talk about.
I was asked at Shakespeare and Company when I was coming up in my mid-20s by Tina Packer, my mentor. She just died.
I read that
3 days ago. She was 86,
Wow.
I believe, and she trained with the RSC, John Barton, and then went over when she was about 40
Legend,
to found Shakespeare and Company, and great humanist, great mind, great brilliant soul. And she had a real eye for the mysteries and who could take the ball down the field and give us a deeper understanding as to what they meant. She, at some point, asked me to do a lecture for free, one of those, you're here, you might as well fill a slot in a humanities series. And she said, I want you to do a lecture on the music of the spheres. And I had heard those words in that sequence before, but had no concept. And that's the beginning of my life completely changing around this philosophy, around this study. And that has taken me into what music is and into the book and other things that I'm sure we'll discuss. Basically, the story goes like this. In Plato's Timaeus, he recounts the myth of is a man, E-R, who has a vision while he is having a near-death experience on the funeral pyre about to be burnt. And he imagines himself ascending and seeing the planets. And as the planets are orbiting, quote unquote, in their spheres, which means they're sort of in their ecosystems, like in their orbs, in their, I guess you can imagine like an ozone type situation in their spheres. There is an angel, a siren, sitting at the top of each planet. And the siren angel is singing one note indefinitely forever. And so all 7 planets, he had imagined the moon at that point, all these orbs were made of a scale, a 7-note scale. And that he could hear this music because he was dead. He could hear the music of the spheres. But then when he came back to Earth and he woke up and he said, first of all, don't burn me alive. Second of all, I've had a most rare vision, and told this story. And so this mythology comes through Plato and was probably much older than that, but then comes through this idea of a musical heavens, that there is a perfect musical consonance in the heavens. And now we know that this isn't just Greek history, but the Mayans and the Hindus and the Chinese even etched on this gong, all have these other versions of a musical cosmos. And so what we have to reckon with is that human intuition has created this idea that past the things we can explain, in other words, Lorenzo's muddy vesture of decay.
Right.
Okay. While we are in this physical body with its lusts and its imperfections and its diseases, we can't hear it. But, darling Jessica, and you have to understand in that scene, he's trying to get the girl in that scene.
Of course.
That's what he wants.
Yeah.
Okay. So all this sweet stuff to try to get her in the mood is hilarious.
Yeah.
But he goes on this wonderfully poetic pirouette, which is why it's so beautiful, about how there is perfection. There is order in the universe, and we can't feel it because we are here, but when we die, we're going to inherit it, and it's going to become one with who we are. And, there's pieces of that I believe too, but more interesting is this idea that music to all cultures has the opportunity to represent to our senses a kind of utopia. When you tune a chord perfectly, the sound is so divine and so perfect that it allows humans to actually touch what perfection is. And when we go to a concert now and we hear the best orchestra play at Royal Festival Hall or the Barbican, we are sitting in a sonic utopia. That is one of the reasons I believe we cry or we feel things, because it sounds so good that the idea that anything can sound so good when the world is so apoplectically awful much of the time is a moving experience. And that this was true all through humanity, through the beginning of music. We don't know. We have the earliest recorded bits, fragments, bone flutes 40,000 years ago, but the human voice, obviously, millions of years before then. And when you tune a chord with singers, the first humans that ever did that, understanding the richness of it. And we could talk about the harmonics of it and why it sounds good, what the physics of it, why it sounds good. But this is really touching divinity, and that divinity meant perfection, and that perfection was translated into this kind of, anti-Nietzschean, there is a perfection in the universe.
I read that there was a discovery that you had that was part of the genesis of this. Maybe it had to do when you were researching the lecture on music of the spheres, that had to do with the moons of Jupiter, and that this was kind of a turning point. What was that about?
So between Plato and now, a lot of the astronomers in the medieval period and in the Renaissance labored to find the mathematical proof that supported and buttressed Plato's or the myth of her. And Aristotle doubted the practicalities of the sirens and the angels and things. So there was a lot of disagreement all through the medieval period, and a lot of astronomers trying to kind of crack the code as to what the perfection would be. Your audience will be familiar a little bit, I hope, with Kepler, who's the one who determined that there were ellipses around, orbital periods were ellipses, not circles. And he came up with some consonant ratios in the heavens that did seem to match the musical scale in a way that was convincing to him, but isn't convincing to us. It took past the Renaissance until Laplace looked at the orbital periods of three what are called the Galilean moons around Jupiter, Io, Europa, and Ganymede. Now, we're discovering more moons around Jupiter every decade because they're very small. Jupiter has over 90 moons of various sizes, right? But these three enormous ones that have measurable gravitational pull on each other have fallen into what's called an orbital resonance with each other. 1, 2 to 4. So one of them orbits Jupiter exactly twice as fast as the other, and the third orbits Jupiter exactly twice as fast as the second one.
Okay, so how do those ratios connect to music? Because you're not saying they're making music, right?
No.
Yeah.
So this is the jump we have to understand, and once we do, the rest of the research starts to fall out. So in a major chord, which we know, do, mi, so, 1, 3, 5, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, seem like the same pitch to us, don't they? Do, do, si, si, even call them the same letter, right?
Yeah.
Why is that? Why does that seem like it's the same pitch an octave higher, do you think? Ba, ba. How would you say?
God, I have no idea, even though I've played piano my whole life and sang, and I have no idea why it's the same.
Well, the frequency of the octave is exactly twice as high as the frequency of the octave below it.
Okay.
It's 2 to 1.
Right.
So if this is 100 hertz, that's 200 hertz.
Okay.
2 to 1 is the simplest mathematical ratio we have. So just think about how simple fractions can get. 1/2 is the most basic relationship. I've got one of these and I got 2 of these. So what happens when you get 1, 2 to 4? Well, 4 to 2 reduces to 2 to 1. So now you have 1, 2, 4, 2, 1. So 4 to 2 is 1 octave. 2 to 1 is another octave. They're all C's. Okay. So the relationship between those intervals is the same. You have 2 octaves spelled out with 3 notes. You with me?
Yeah.
So if Io, Europa, and Ganymede is Io, Europa, Ganymede, why would that be? Why is it that those 3 moons would find this perfect consonant intervallic relationship with each other? Wouldn't they be random? Wouldn't they be 13 over 74 or, I don't know, 23.2 over pi? I mean, where's the perfection coming? How long have they been there? Well, this is relatively newly interesting in astronomy, this idea of resonance capture, whereby things that oscillate can actually fall into harmonic convergence with other oscillations. And so if you have something spinning It could be a neuron in your brain. It could be a moon around Jupiter, and it's orbiting in some periodicity. It's oscillating, and you have something else nearby that's also oscillating. It turns out that these two oscillations can, over time, affect each other and fall into sync. In other words, they move towards each other over time. The concept here that is easiest to understand was discovered in 1666. It's called entrainment. So the Dutch scientist Christian Huygens, who invented the pendulum clock, discovered two clocks on his wall that were out of sync and found synchrony over time. And this is really easy to get for people because they imagine two things, tick, 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 and by the end of the day, they're tick, tick, tick.
Yeah.
It's spooky.
Yeah.
In the case of Huygens, they were hung on the same wall, and so these pendulum clocks were passing energy through the wall and pushing each other and affecting each other and ultimately aligning into harmonic sync. They could also push each other, depending on how they started, into opposite tick, 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 tick,
Yeah.
tick. But the point is, once they get to that simple intervallic relationship, they stop changing.
Yeah.
Okay? So why is it that things affect each other and fall into sync? It's because of a principle you will be familiar with that's called various things in physics. The principle of minimal effort, the path of least resistance. The truth is that in any system of orbiting bodies or oscillations, it takes less energy for that system to fall into synchrony. And so over time, if left undisturbed, a system that's simple enough will slowly self-harmonize over time and lock into the stable nodes of the harmonic series. 1 to 2 or 1 to 3, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. And then as the fractions get more complicated, its stability is diminished, as you might imagine. But the first 3 or 4 of the simplest mathematical ratios we have show up in lots of other places in our solar system and in our universe. In 2017, astronomers found a system 40 light years away from Earth called TRAPPIST-1. And TRAPPIST-1 has 7 planets orbiting around its star in perfect harmonic frequencies. And you can hear what it sounds like when you put all of these tones together. And perhaps I'll play the music that we created for this sequence for your listeners now. So what you can hear is 7 pitches that are playing in pitches you recognize, in a scale you recognize. And so when we come back to our own scales in the Western world and scales around the world, we have the opportunity to say, okay, these are inclinations the universe has to fall into these places, these pockets, these nodes of minimal effort. And these are the reasons why we make our music the way we do, because it allows us to commune with this force in the universe that we've not fully grasped. There is entropy in the world. There is chaos. There is chance. There is randomness. There is terror. There is climate change. There is the death of democracy. There's all those things. But there is also this perfection. And the perfection is not sirens sitting on top of planets humming a constant pitch until their eyes go blue. The perfection is that the universe actually prefers peace. It prefers these relationships of least resistance. Two oscillations in a closed system will not stay dissonant forever. They will affect each other and slowly merge into some sort of stable pattern, not because it's musical, but because it's better. It feels better. It is more stable.
Yeah.
And when we love a piece of music because it returns to the home key and tunes that big chord at the end after it's done all of these dissonant development sections, and after it's modulated, and after it's enjoyed its chaos, and when it comes back to that chord at the end of the piece, and you feel the pleasure of all that resolution, to me, this is our opportunity to connect to what the universe has been doing all along, which is to say, we do have an opinion, and we prefer equilibrium, not because we're pacifists, not because we're, socialists. We prefer it because it's easier and it takes less energy.
Well, okay, there's so much that's quite beautiful as I listen to that and even moving just hearing you describe it. If we, the universe, prefer peace, why is it seem to be the opposite? Not just now, but forever. It seems to be, I was having this conversation with my mom actually, because I was telling her about we were going to have this recording, and she actually brought this question up, which was like, that's a beautiful concept. Why does it seem to be the opposite through all human history? It seems like we prefer chaos.
Well, there are a million answers to that, but there are two that come to mind. First of all, if you read Steven Pinker, you can be persuaded by his argument that we're actually living in the most peaceful century in human history.
Interesting.
And that after all the great wars followed much less crime per capita, a much more peaceful universe. And that what we're fighting against is we now know too much. We know about every murder and every piece of violence and every problem. But actually, this is the best time to have ever been alive, and the least violent time to have ever been alive. Okay, that's thing one.
Yeah.
Thing two branches into slightly more spiritual chat, and so I have to take my journalist hat off, following the science, and go a little bit more into my sort of beliefs about the universe, which is that it seems obvious to me that in order to appreciate the light, you need darkness, and in order to have happy moments, you need to have had sad moments. And that it would be overly simplistic to think that all the music we wanted to listen to was one beautiful tuned chord for the rest of all eternity.
Yeah.
I know you like music that does wild things as much as I do, as much as all your listeners. Why do we listen to things that are aggressive or music that gets us energized? We do it because it takes us to these other states where we learn about ourselves and we can negotiate ourselves with the world, and we can learn and grow and develop. None of us want to sit and hermeticize ourselves in a monastery, and I mean, some of us do. I question that as well, because we ought to live full lives that have all of it. And I challenge anyone to disagree with me on this point, that music is actually teaching us that we want to learn, we want to grow, we want novelty, we want to listen to the new track, we want to develop, we want to grow our brains, we want to live into the future of our lives. And that doesn't mean finding stable nodes of peace like pendulum clocks and riding it until we die. It means continually breaking things and hurting ourselves and hurting other people. And that's the human condition. No one understood that more than, these wonderful passages of Shakespeare where he's constantly measuring the right balance between the divinity we know is there and the frailty that I know I have.
Yeah.
And that's what creates great drama. And so we're addicted to that story as well.
It's interesting because on your first point about the fact that we have access to all the information, and one of the things that I didn't discover it, but it was a discovery for me in just this past year that I'm going to continue on into 2026 is at the South Bank Centre in London. You can, in certain concerts, they've got the seats behind the stage where the choir would sit if there was a choir. But if there's not a choir and it's a symphony or orchestra playing, you can sit there and it's very cheap. £10, £15, whatever it is. And so one day I thought, I'll do that. It was really, cheap ticket. And first of all, if you like classical music, it's a really fun experience because you're basically directly in the eye line of the conductor, and I'm just like, I'm there. And at one point when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a conductor, and I thought this would be such a incredible power that you have standing up there. But the other thing is you're sort of inside the orchestra, and I thought I would just do this once, but it's become a thing that I do a couple times a month where I go there and I describe it as a massage for my brain, because I feel like it just, I can think about whatever I want to think about, but as the concert goes on, it's kind of like it's slowly slowly going away, sifting down, kind of just massaging the knots out. And it's become this experience, this little ritual for me that feels very important in the world where I find, I get quite overwhelmed by the screen and the phone and all that kind of stuff. And it's a place that I just have to turn it all off, and I don't look at my phone and I don't get overwhelmed by that noise.
One of the reasons I think is because you are actively listening in a
Mm,
space, in a context of your life like mine, which is full of passive listening.
mm,
We're listening to music while we cook. We're listening while we are
mm,
at the gym. We're listening in the
mm.
dentist's office, but we're not actually putting the phone down
Sure.
and listening actively. And there are huge differences neurologically when
Mm,
we actively versus passively listen to anything.
mm.
There's differences between active passive listening within the same conversation when your mind floats and then comes back to the person and you get more
Totally.
data. Now this would be obvious to any of you, but
Yeah.
it's not obvious to everyone that our life is awash with music, but because it's all passive, we're actually not mining it for its messages. Music is a whole brain experience. It fires so many different corners of our brain. And this is why musicians, particularly ones that start and play a lot before they're, say, 14 or 15, have visibly different brains. You can take a brain of a 75-year-old person, two of them out. Don't try this at home, and you can see a musician's brain without any special equipment.
Oh, really?
There's more
Interesting.
there's more gray matter. The corpus callosum, which is the bundle of nerve fibers between the left and right hemisphere, is a lot bigger. And music requires more connections in the brain, and whether that means a person is smarter is a really wild reduction. We don't really know, or neuroscientists don't really know, and it's not quite a way of taking away this material. But certainly for my kids, I want them to practice music because it seems that it's creating a lot more connections in the brain by the application of it. This redounds to our benefit as listeners as well, in a lifetime of listening to different things where we're growing our ears in an active way. Music coming at us from every grocery store and elevator and, you know, car radio is not the same thing.
Mm.
So when you, Kevin, go and are in an acoustically magical space, which also does something different from your brain because you're literally immersed in this sonic utopia,
Mm.
these acoustical temples where the music is literally zinging all around your head,
Mm.
okay? And you're not listening to speakers play music. You're listening to it naturally flow out of these instruments in an acoustic way. And now you're getting the visual benefit of watching the conductors, seeing ahead of the beat, where's the solo and what's happening, what's the story of the music. It really is a brain spa.
Yeah. I tell you, as soon as I got back from the holidays in London, I started looking, when's the next one I can go to? You're talking about brain spa and the neuroscience of it. And so I thought maybe it would be good to hear this incredible project called What Music Is, which I discovered through a short documentary. There's an Instagram page that has lots of interesting information and clips on it. It's a concert, a live concert that has been playing and will continue to play, and it's going to become a book as well. So there's lots of different facets to this. But you're obviously involved and the central point of it, but you've brought on astronomers, astrophysicists, and now we're talking about neuroscience. So why these different elements and what made you decide to bring them all together for this?
I want to create knowledge for the world to use to advance the human race. And it could be very small and it could affect a couple people, my mom and my daughter, or it could be large and it could affect a lot more people. Both are really valuable to me. In order to say something new to the layman about science, I needed specialisms that I didn't possess as an artist. And I needed someone to represent the very, very big astrophysicist Matteo Cantiello and someone who represents the very, very small neuroscientist Lucas Volz. And all three of us, me sort of on the human plane in the middle, dealing with the arts, sciences, and culture and impact of it all, is a study of oscillations amidst all of our three spheres, how they interrelate and how oscillations become a common denominator that can help people understand what the universe is doing on the enormous and very small levels. We're not going to try and answer every question, but the point is to try to tell an intellectual adventure story about why every single human culture that's ever been discovered makes music, why music seems, along with language, to be an essential, definitive human act, what it's here for, and what it's pointing to. There's a Buddhist framework that says, don't obsess over the instruction. That's like looking at the finger pointing at the moon. You're supposed to look at the moon. And so we have to be careful not to get lost in the weeds of looking at pieces of music and looking at the finger. We have to try to grab the audience and tell them to look at the moon.
Okay, so one of the things that I was reading about this is you say that one of the difficulties of defining music's purpose is how musical experiences feel so subjective and culturally diverse. But yet you say this may conceal a deeper commonality. Is that commonality the oscillations that you're talking about?
The oscillations and also the lowest harmonics. So this is very important because we spend a lot of time in the show. I spend a lot of time in the show, and then us in the book talking about music from other cultures, which can sound very foreign to our ears. And you might think, okay, I've heard Hindustani rag, and I've heard Indonesian gamelan orchestras, and I've heard folk music from the Balkans, and they don't sound anything like this. When you look at every major scale system in the world except for one, you find the octave and the fifth, which are the same ratios that would crop up in these resonant capture systems in astronomy. So do you remember how I said that the lower fractions, say 4/5, 5/6, are less stable in these resonant capture situations? They're also less common in scale systems around the world. The reason, I think, is because human beings for history could hear these basic fractional relationships inside every pitch. And every note that you hear, I can sing a pitch for you. And inside that note are all of those other fractions all at once. The major chord is actually inside every single pitch. I'm going to demonstrate that for you. Okay. So that's a note. You think you're hearing only this note, but I'm going to change the shape of my mouth and you're going to hear other notes. Back here.
For the listener, there wasn't a didgeridoo in the studio, I swear to God. And all you were doing is moving your lips in different shapes when you were making that sound.
So that's called overtone singing,
Wow.
or sometimes called throat singing. It doesn't have anything to do with your throat, except that's where your squeeze box is.
Sure.
But it's to demonstrate that the harmonic series is inside every pitch.
Wow.
And the harmonic series is 1, 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, 1/5, 1/6. They get quieter as they get louder. But if you're a person 500,000 years ago in a big cave, and you just go God or oh, you can hear, any human being can hear that. So those lowest harmonics are the ones that humans could hear for centuries if they just spent a little time goofing around with their lips and tongue, which we got to imagine they did.
They didn't have doom scrolling, so they had to do something.
They weren't on their iPhones. So if you can hear them in the human voice, which we've had for millennia, then it's not surprising that those intervals, the lowest harmonics, find their way into scale systems. Now, Kevin, once you add, okay, here's a sitar and this is all percussion, and blah, 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 and we hear the sounds and the structures and the ornamentation of the musical languages, and it sounds as foreign to our ears as Greek does to an English speaker, without realizing that in Greek, as well as in English, there are a universal set of sounds. Phonemes, what Noam Chomsky calls universal grammar. Quick example. So I don't know how many. There are hundreds of languages around the world that use M-A, the sound M-A, to mean mother. Why might that be? Well, it's the sound a baby first makes to receive its milk. Ma. mama, madre, all around the world. And were they communicating about this? Were they were they recommending to other cultures that this was a really good
Listen,
idea?
Ma works really well for getting the boob.
Yeah, totally.
You know,
No,
sending letters around the world.
we have to recognize that there are constants that are based on our biology, and music is the same way. The lowest harmonics find their way into scale systems around the world in a very natural way. And once you see what the waveforms are doing and see how these other musical systems are organized, all except Javanese music, gamelan music, and some rare, very small indigenous species from around the world, species of music that is, all of them use the most audible harmonics in the overtone series.
Wow. This is really, really fascinating. I just want to kind of wrap up talking about what this discovery and this research is doing, and also what we can do. I mean, there's an obvious one: experience more music and live music especially. But I also had a thought this year when I was thinking about the fascinating conversations that we're going to have on the podcast and reaching out to various people in my life who might have a link to what we're talking about. One of my dear friends, who's called Benjamin Elliott, Ben, he and I went to drama school together, and he lives in Vancouver. And I can't describe him other than a musical genius, and I don't say genius about very many people. My first memories are, all the house parties at drama school where there's a piano there, and suddenly something just emerges and everybody's caught up in this sound. So I asked him, he follows what music is. I saw on Instagram, and I thought, he'd be a great person to ask what is he looking for, interested in relation to you and your work. So he talked about the power of music, and he was curious about your thoughts on kind of where nature ends and where nurture begins. There's a lovely story that he says in his family that gets told when his mom was pregnant. She and his father went to see the Irish harpist and soloist Mary O'Hara sing some French-Canadian jigs and reels. And apparently during one particularly energetic tune, he started kicking along to the beat. And it became such a moment that people around her put their hands on her belly to feel it. So he's wondering, when it comes to how music affects us, what in your mind is bred in the bone and what's learned? And I guess an extension on that for me is kind of what can we all do to use this knowledge to maybe get a little bit less chaos in our life?
Great questions. Listening and understanding what cultural musical system you're going to be born into happens in utero, as the story suggests. So we developed our hearing system in the second trimester. And starting then, our brains are programmed to our musical culture. And so things we find consonant and dissonant, or syncopated and not syncopated, start to get set up by years of passive listening. So by the time we form memories that we can lean on, but 3 years old-ish, we don't remember this programming, this nurture programming that we have. We are all naturally disposed to consider every spoken language our own if we came up in it, and music is no different. It actually goes back to how frequently we're fed certain intervals. The octave, the perfect fifth, the major third is a big one. If we are born into a musical system where yada, which we think is a happy interval, bum bum bum, is happy, we think of that as happy. But if you were born into, an Eastern European or Slavic country where the minor chord was happy, you would find it a wonderful, life-affirming thing, and we find it sad.
Yeah.
All right. And so the nurture has a huge part. But what music is a combination of nature and nurture. We wring from physics our cultural vocabulary that we can talk about and share, and that brings us back to the universal things the universe is doing all the time. We've just underrepresented what that universal nature is in our shared human experience. And that's what I'm trying to do with this book, is to connect us together as a human culture and understand that there are things that we can do, we can use music to leverage once we know that can improve our health and can enhance human flourishing. Just a little example, Kevin. If you're depressed at home on the couch and you put on some Aretha Franklin, things change.
Yeah. So true.
Faster than any antidepressant you could take.
Yeah, you don't need to go out to the South Bank Centre in London, though. If you can, great. You can just throw on some Aretha.
You also don't have to switch on your phone. You can turn on some music and dance. Those two things, if you wanted to do that just to give yourself a little shift, is one of the most profound things you could do for your health.
Yeah. Oh my God. I could talk to you forever and ever and ever, but really, really fascinating. I encourage everybody listening to, well, let's just mention a few things of how they can continue to follow you and find out what's going on, because your work is in the States, in the UK, and other parts of the world. So we can find you on Instagram. Concert Theatre Works is the company that you founded, right?
Concert Theatre Works, we tour around the world. What Music Is, the show with orchestra and animations by Sean Feeney. And that clip we played earlier of the TRAPPIST-1 system, that was made by Sean Feeney as well. Sean and I tour with What Music Is. We're going to announce shows next year in a few months. So you can find all of that at concerttheatreworks.com.
Amazing. And we'll link all that in the show notes. You know, I just remember one of the last things that I was looking at when I was researching for this is you're talking about, you know, music is the sound of a universe seeking consonance with itself, which I thought was really interesting. A tool that connects human consciousness to cosmic order while celebrating cultural diversity. But it feels pretty special. It feels pretty important.
It sounded pretty grand just
it
then
feels
when
pretty,
you said it.
Yeah, but you know what? There's something about the union, the sort of unification of everything, but then also the celebrating of the diversity. Those two ideas is something that I haven't heard. That to me is what feels particularly special and important, and why I encourage people to, you know, follow you and continue to take in your work. So thank you so much for talking to me today. It was absolutely
pleasure.
lovely. It just
great.
flew by.
Thanks, Kevin.
Fantastic. When the bells ring out across the big smoke, it's time to wander into our local village hall to discover what's pinned on the Parish Noticeboard this week. Over the holidays, lots of us will have set lofty goals, New Year's resolutions, promising ourselves that we're going to work on a thing or two this year. Now, the vast majority of these goals tend to be health-related. Indeed, research shows that about 80% of New Year's resolutions are to do with fitness. So today, we're exploring a fitness goal hundreds of thousands reach for every week: Parkrun. Parkrun, the free weekly 5K community event held across the country and the world, can look a little like a secret club from the outside. But really, it's a simple idea. Every Saturday morning, people of all ages and abilities come together to walk, jog, run, or volunteer in a friendly, welcoming environment. And if you know someone who takes part, you'll know they won't stop going on about it.
And it's actually my wife got me into Parkrun way back in 2011. And she'd heard about this thing going on down the road in Bushy Park. And we went along together. And since then, I've never really looked back. It has a habit of grabbing you, and it's quite addictive.
That voice you just heard is Andy Howarth, co-event director of Bushy Parkrun, along with his colleague Alex Tical. You'll hear from Alex in just a moment. Part of the reason for Parkrun's enormous success is its simplicity.
Well, the Parkrun model is really very simple. You register with Parkrun, then print off or save an electronic version of your Parkrun ID in the form of a barcode. Once registered, you're able to walk, run or volunteer at any Parkrun event worldwide. Unless you want to volunteer, you don't need to tell an event you're attending. You just turn up, listen to the pre-run brief, walk or run 5K, collect a finish token, and then go to a barcode scanner who'll scan your personal barcode and the finish token, and then about an hour later you'll receive your result email.
And guess what? Parkrun is totally free. Whoever said there's no such thing as a free lunch clearly hadn't heard about Parkrun.
The ethos of Parkrun is centred on community, inclusivity and health, aiming to make physical activity accessible to everyone regardless of their ability, with a strong emphasis on the kindness, respect and volunteer spirit that makes it a welcoming environment.
Before we get to Parkrun's now international popularity, let's run the clock back slightly to understand where it all started. It's 2004 on a chilly October morning in Bushy Park, Teddington.
So Bushy Parkrun started way back in October 2004. It was originally coined as the Bushy Park Time Trial, and there were 13 finishers that day. And I think there were about 5 volunteers as well. And it was all started by a gentleman who was a runner with Ranelagh Harriers, a local running club, and he got injured, Paul Sinton Hewitt, and unable to run because of his injury. He was missing the sort of collectiveness of running with his friends, and said, look, guys, next Saturday, I'm going to organise 9 o'clock, a time trial for you all, 5K, and we'll go and have coffee afterwards. And we'll do this every week and see how our times progress. Little did he know what that would become some 21 years later. Hundreds of park runs around the globe, of course, and in the UK, super popular.
At its heart, Parkrun has always been about community, a simple way for people to stay connected, support each other, and share a slice of Saturday morning together. And even as it grows, that core spirit hasn't changed, and boy has it grown. There are now over 1,300 events worldwide, with some in places as far south as the Falkland Islands and as far north as Pokinen in Finland. This international element has generated some fun challenges for those seasoned park runners, like the Parkrun Alphabet or Parkrun A to Z.
There are a number of challenges which park runners and volunteers like to kind of undertake. One of those being achieving the Parkrun Alphabet or Parkrun A to Z. And the Parkrun Alphabet only has 25 letters as opposed to 26, because no parkrun in the world begins with the letter X. Within the UK, there's also no parkrun that begins with the letter Z. The only Zs, I believe, the nearest one is in The Hague in Holland, and there are a couple in Poland as well. So anyone wanting to achieve their 25-letter parkrun alphabet has to kind of factor in some tourism abroad, i.e. to Holland or to Poland to get their letter Z. So just going back a step, each park run has its own name, of course, and then people attend all the different park runs with it starting with a different letter, not necessarily in order.
Now, this is quite a feat, and you may find yourself wondering, who on earth has managed to do that?
Yes, so leading on from what Alex said about the Alphabet Challenge, yes, I completed mine a couple of years ago. We had to go to Poland. We had a visit to one of the several parkruns in Poland beginning with Z, because rather fortunately, Zielona is Polish for park, so there's quite a number there.
This all sounds great in theory, especially if you got a bit of stamina, but for many of us, there's a very real hurdle. The thought of running a full 5K can feel completely out of reach.
Parkrun's very keen on encouraging walkers to parkrun who have never run before, to get them active whilst enjoying their local park and meeting new people, getting them outside, basically. One of Parkrun's key performance indicators is the reduction of the overall average time of parkrun events, as this shows that more and more people that aren't historically runners or weren't previously active are now attending events. Therefore, to answer the question, you can go any speed at Parkrun, and anyone from Olympic athletes to new people walking 5K are welcome and are equally celebrated at any event.
So whether you're aiming to hit your new fitness goals, enjoy some fresh air, or just meet new people, Parkrun makes it easy and fun. Even if you hate running, the Parkrun community makes it near impossible to skip a week. Friendly faces and shared encouragement turn, ugh, do I really have to, into, I actually did it. When can I do it again? Afraid you're going to be last in the race? You won't be. One of the most endearing parts of Parkrun is that an event volunteer acts as the tail walker and always brings up the rear. No park runner left behind. With every step, that sense of belonging helps you smash personal goals you never thought possible. With events happening every weekend across the UK and around the world, there's almost certainly one near you ready to welcome runners, walkers, and volunteers alike. So why not check out your local park run this weekend? Find the link in the show notes and grab your barcode. Lace up your trainers and discover why hundreds of thousands of people make Parkrun part of their routines. Now lean a little closer. No, closer still. Here at the Big Smoke, the fog occasionally parts to reveal something unusual. And tonight, drifting in from the whispering corridors of the Xander Eldrick Institute, where clocks don't always tick in the right order, we have two new visitors. They call themselves the Strange Brothers, apprentice magicians who are here to complete their training. Behold.
Magic. Bet you think you've got it all figured out.
Yeah. You think it's just a bit of misdirection, sleight of hand, and, magnets or something. I don't know.
But what if it were real? What if everything you held dear, your precious grip on reality, what if that turned out to be the real illusion?
Well, wonder no more as we bring you a world exclusive of our brand new routine. So go wild, go crazy as you welcome to the stage the fire-breathing, hula-hooping, gravity-defying duo, the Strange Brothers.
Oh, there he goes, folks. Watch out. Hey.
Guys, you know that this is a podcast, right?
I'm sorry?
The Big Smoke, we're a podcast variety show.
Okay, so what you're saying is...
It's an audio-only medium.
Right, but the bit with the levitating tiger.
And the blindfolded, flaming, dagger juggling.
You saw all of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I saw it. It was spectacular, truly. But I'm just not sure the listeners got the best experience.
Listeners. Right.
That does explain all the microphones.
Yes. And the severe lack of audience.
No, but I definitely heard the sound of a rapturous applause just
It's
before
sound
we...
bites, guys. It's on a computer.
Well, no matter. The show must go on, as they always say.
Must go on what? Spotify?
Greetings, ladies and gentlefolk. We are tonight's entertainment. My name is Salazar Strange, Sorcerer Extreme. And standing next to me here is my mystical brother in charms.
Craig. Hi.
Yes, but remember, Craig, I told you to come up with a stage name.
Oh, cripes. Yeah, you did.
You did come up with one.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, totally. I am Craig, the Craig who's crazy good at magic.
Right. Well, as you can tell, dear audience, Craig is still
still figuring it out. Yeah, that is a work in progress.
Yep.
For show.
Faux show indeed. Speaking of shows, we should probably get this one back on track. Now, we are delighted to be with you here at the Big Smoke as part of our final examination in the pursuit of becoming fully fledged, officially licensed magicians. Yeah, what are you doing?
I don't know, I was just trying to spice things up. Orally, for the listeners.
Right, well, don't.
Oh, sure.
For you see, dear audience...
Or not, as the case may be.
We are apprentices at the great Xander Eldrick Institute of Illusion, Divination and...
Dance.
Yes, another skill that has seemingly fallen by the proverbial wayside if we are to be shackled to this infernal audio-based medium.
Which is a real shame because my pliers are on point.
Indeed, and it is the bidding of our great and fearless teacher, Xander Eldrick himself, that we perform a series of illusions in front of a real audience in order for us to complete the final examination.
Nation.
Greg.
Sorry.
But since we are without such an audience, this perhaps was all just a big mistake and we should just pack up our things and...
not necessarily, Sal. Was it not a wise man who once said, "The show must go on"?
Yeah, it was me.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, like literally a few seconds ago.
Oh, right. Well, then let's do what we came here to do. Let's become real magicians.
All right, fine. Let's do it. For we are
The Strange Brothers.
Behold, a deck of cards. So simple, so elegant.
And yet so full of deceit and monarchs. Coincidence?
Okay, let's not get into your socio-political views right now. So, here it is, folks. A simple deck of cards. No frills, no cards glued together, nothing like that. Now, Craig, would you please take a card, any card,
Okie dokie.
and just make sure you get a good look at what the card is.
The 8 of diamonds. Got it.
Right, obviously don't say what the card...
The card is. Yeah, sorry, I was just doing it for the listeners.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I hadn't actually thought of that. Right. Okay, well, let's just carry on. Just pick another card, any card.
Okay, got one.
Now, do not say what it is. I just want you to look at it and place it back into the deck and give it a good shuffle for me.
Uh-huh. There you go.
Wonderful. Now, you did not reveal what your card was.
No, I did not.
And there is no possible way I could have seen your card.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And so now I, the great Salazar Strange, wielder of the mystical arts, keeper of the ancient flame of Malgarth the Magnificent, inheritor of the dark orb, and it is now suddenly dawning on me that this trick is purely a visual reveal and will therefore have little to no impact on our audience at all. Is this your card?
Oh my god, it is! Oh, I see what you mean, yeah.
Did you see that one, Kevin?
Oh, actually, I missed that one. I was, editing.
Oh, really, Kevin? Because I imagine it must be pretty hard to edit while also playing Angry Birds on your phone.
Hey, I need downtime too.
Sal, come on. Kevin was kind enough to invite us onto his show and allow us to do the very thing that we love most in the world. Because at the end of the day, isn't friendship the most powerful magic
Wait,
of all?
shut up. That's it.
What, friendship?
No, editing. Don't you see? We can use the power of editing to do the impossible.
But that's cheating.
Oh, it's magic. It's all cheating.
Fair enough.
Okay, let's agree on a random phrase to speak at exactly the same time, and then we'll edit out this conversation so that the listeners think we did it with some kind of mind-melding magic.
Freight train.
What? No. Something more random and complicated, like...
Pineapple.
No, are you listening to what I'm saying?
Right, sorry. What about,
While balancing a lukewarm sardine tin on the rim of an antique top hat, the apprentice cartographer apologized meekly to the committee for misplacing the 17th peninsula during the rehearsal of the Silent Kazoo Overture. Whoa, that was crazy. Wait, how are you doing that? No, seriously, how are you doing that? Okay, stop it now. No, stop. I mean it. Don't make me... Okay, wise guy. Snuggle. Crimped underpants. No Gallagher's high-flying birds. Oh my cripes. This is magic. It must be actual magic. Are you not entertained, listeners? We've been the Strange Brothers. Thank you and good night. Right, so then, Kevin, you'll just edit out the conversation we had just before that, right?
Damn it. One little green pig left. Shoot.
Kevin, you got that, right?
Huh? Oh, yeah, sure. I'm editing as we speak. Well, what a strange segment that turned out to be. Can't wait for the return of the Strange Boys and an upcoming... What?
It's actually the Strange Brothers. We said it a bunch of times.
Look, just leave it, Craig. We'll see you soon, Kevin.
Happy editing. Wink.
Yeah. Maybe edit all of this out too. All right, we'll just see ourselves out then, shall we?
Well, what a strange segment that turned out to be. And we'd expect nothing less from the Strange Boys, Strange Brothers. Well, that's today's episode. We've explored how music might help us glimpse the secrets of the universe, discovered why Parkrun became a global phenomenon with a very local impact, and even experienced some strange yet very real magic. If you liked what you heard, why not share it with a friend or leave us a quick 5-star review? Until next time, friends, we'll see you soon in the Big Smoke.